Hello and welcome to another episode in our series called Picture This from Israel. Today is a very bright and sunny day, as you can see, but we're at a place called Herodium, and we're going to try to picture the grandeur of this palace fortress and, of course, talk about Herod the Great as well. Picture Herod the Great building a palace fortress in this area, just nearby Bethlehem. But look at this huge hill that he converted and even extended, if you will, with 4 large towers at the top. He had this built as one of several palace fortresses. One, of course, the main one was Masada on the west side of the Dead Sea, and then one called Machaerus on the eastern side of the Dead Sea. We are about 8 or 9 miles from Jerusalem. In fact, there it is behind me. We'll take a look from the top as well of the ridge. Actually, we can see the Mount of Olives from the top, but what we want to do is I want you to picture the beauty of this one room called the reception room and the small theater that was built. And then, believe it or not, both were actually destroyed and covered up when Herod died. He died in a place called Jericho, of course, to the east and at the northern end of the Dead Sea. But his body was buried here, actually transported here, and Ehud Netzer, the main archaeologist, now the late Ehud, sorry to say, he died about 10 years ago by accident here on the site. He leaned over a wooden rail and actually broke his neck. Really a horrible way to die. But Ehud Netzer gives us, I think, the best picture, if you will, pun intended, of how we can now picture or imagine this palace fortress, what it looked like in his day. So let's take a look at the reception room first. This reception room is actually quite spectacular. The frescoes are original. The plaster and even the images that we see high above. This room, called the reception room, among other titles, was actually destroyed, covered up, along with the small theater after Herod died and was buried here. But I want you just to understand and try to picture the magnificent artwork and the tedious ways that the frescoes were painted on this wall. You can just see the color still preserved from 2,000 years ago. Imagine yourself as the artist. Probably a number of artists worked on this. On these frescoes in this reception room, and to have your artwork then covered up and concealed for good after Herod died. Picture the time it took to carefully make these walls come to life, if you will. Now we're off the top of the site of Herodium. This is down further off the slopes, if you will, and next thing we'll see is this small theater out this window. Let's now take a look at this small theater. We'll go down these steps. Now, Herod the Great, I picture him as a egotistic, quite evil man. He killed some of his family members. Arrogant. He had a great team of builders because projects like Masada, Machaerus, his winter palace in Jericho, of course here at Herodium that he prepared. Again, we were just inside this reception room there, and this small theater that we see. Everything that he did was done well. And of course we can't leave out the temple project in 20 BC and even Caesarea in 22 BC, a city that he built up over the course of 12 years. Herod the Great, I believe, lived to build things so that people could say how great a guy he was. As I mentioned earlier, he died in Jericho, and his body was brought here. We'll take a look at where his tomb, his mausoleum, was located, and consider his life. Of course, he's mentioned in the Gospels as well, because just over this first hill in front of us, behind this hill and sitting a little lower than the top ridge that you see in the distance, is where Bethlehem is located. Can you imagine Jesus being born under the shadow of such an egotistic king, the king of Judea, if you will, and yet a king who wanted Jesus to be killed, along with everyone else under the age of 2. God's redemptive plan would not be thwarted at all because of this king, Herod the Great. Perhaps oversaw the building of this palace fortress as well. Let's go finally to take a look at where he was buried. Relatively new here at Herodium is this royal archway. We'll eventually go up these steps. But I do want to end here and just show you where his mausoleum was. Herod the Great, this evil ruler, great builder with great engineers. This is the base of what's left of his mausoleum. What's interesting about this location is that we can actually look down to the area of Jericho. There in the distance we can even see, even though it's hazy, a bit of the Dead Sea, with Jericho being located at the northern tip of the Dead Sea. The Judean desert now in view, with all of these Arab villages in between. If we continue to pan in this direction, we eventually see the backside of the Mount of Olives. Right there, which is Jerusalem. I can picture Herod the Great perhaps sitting on top of this palace fortress. In fact, we'll end there with one other panoramic view. But I picture Herod in all of his arrogance, being glorified by people with all these building projects. I imagine Herod, who died after reigning for a time period between 37 BC and 4 BC, according to traditional chronology. I see Herod dying a very lonely man. I picture him as one who, even though he wanted to be glorified with what he accomplished, perhaps he would be remembered in just the opposite way. So here at Herodium, where his resting place was, discovered by Ehud Netzer, an archaeologist here, we consider the life of Herod the Great and picture him perhaps retreating here from time to time himself, here in the vicinity just to the east of Bethlehem and to the south of Jerusalem. So let's indeed go up these steps, this royal archway. I wasn't planning to, but really we can't picture the beauty and the magnificence of this palace fortress until we go to the top. Replicas of the archway we see here, but below us we actually can see original ones. They're coming into view. Let's go now and officially finish this from one of the four towers, the highest of the four towers, to give us a good view of everything around us. More frescoes, by the way, with beautiful colors still preserved. So we really need to finish up here as we take a look at what's behind me. There were four towers up here that Herod built. We're going to go up the highest one. Of course, for us, it's been sort of reconstructed, and we'll get a great view from there. But look what's below me, this rounded palace fortress. That Herod built. It would serve as his final resting place. Try to picture all the people who participated in this building of this palace fortress. How many hundreds of people in the hot sun? We're right on the edge of the desert. And yet that's what they did. I'm not sure how long it took to build this one, but he did extend the natural hill with this bowl that we saw and we'll see from the top here. But that was the life of those who worked for Herod the Great. And we're making it our way to the top here. One last look, and then we'll sign off. Let's take a look at what we can see around us. First to the east is more of the Judean desert, the Dead Sea. Try to picture someone living here in this highest tower and now looking towards Jerusalem to the north. I can see the Mount of Olives, the three towers on top. Now we're looking over this hill right in front of us, and on the other side is Bethlehem, a small town in as Micah would say, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are the smallest of the clans of Judah, out of you will come a ruler." And then to the south, to the south, the village of Tekoa, where the prophet Amos came from. So this magnificent palace fortress is indeed to be respected for its grandeur, all that has been excavated. This 4-tower palace fortress, especially this fourth and highest one that gave us a view of all of this around us. And yet Jesus was born himself in the shadow of this Herod the Great. And I would like to picture those who understood the significance of Jesus coming in light and in comparison to the greatness of Herod the Great. For instance, that of the shepherds who heard the angelic message and who came to see the newly born child named Yeshua. Hope you enjoyed our walk here to the top of Herodium with a great view this afternoon. Until next time, Shalom.